So in this video, I'm going to quickly explain what we have done so far in store game mode so that we have a clearer idea on what is going on in here. I thought of combining this part with the part where we start changing the logic in BP camera, but that would make this video too long for me. So I had to split this video into two parts. So coming back over to the store game mode, this is where the logic will first start from the event begin play. We are going to first check whether we have a save game or not. So if we have a save game, we're going to load that game from the slot, alright, and then save it as a variable. But if we don't have a save game, the branch node over here is going to execute the false spin over here, and that means we're going to create a new save game over here and then save that as a variable. So after we have done checking whether we have a save game or not, we're going to execute the sequence node, and this sequence node over here will first check whether we have saved the data from the data tables or not. And the way we determine that is by using the isDT saved variable in BP save game. So if we have already retrieved all the data from the data table and then saved it, then it's going to execute this print string over here. But if the isDT saved is false, that means we haven't retrieved any data from the data tables and then saved it into the save game. Then it's going to execute the false spin over here. And from the false spin, we are going to obviously get the data table row names. And then using the data from the data table row names, we are going to loop each and every row name in a for each loop. So it's going to get each and every data table row and then add the information inside each of those rows in store characters array over here. Alright, so this store characters array is going to be used to save the data in SaveG store characters over here in BP save game. Alright, so this section of code will only be executed after we have retrieved all the data from the row names and then added those information onto store characters over here. Only then will this completed execution pin over here will be executed. And again, in case you have forgotten, the data in a data table cannot be modified. So if you want to modify any of the data that you have retrieved from the data table, you have to save it in a separate store characters array. And only then you can modify those data. And obviously we will be setting the isDT saved variable in BP save game to true so that we don't do this all again. And what happens if we don't have the isDT saved variable over here, preventing our logic from repeating this whole code over here, is that the data that we retrieve from the data tables will override any data that is saved in the SaveG store characters. Alright, so in case you purchased any characters, all those data will be overridden, and that is why we have the isDT saved variable over here. So the next time when you open the store level, you won't have to execute all of this section over here. And after we have done that, actually, we could remove the execution bin over here and drag this section of logic over here. We actually don't need to create a separate execution pin for that. So you can connect the execution pin number 1 over to our logic over here. We don't really need this second execution pin over here. So let's disconnect it first. And then you can right click on the execution pin and select remove execution pin to remove an execution pin from the sequence. So just drag this bunch of logic higher so that it isn't spaced so far away. So the reason why we need the save game to slot node over here is because in order to save the data that you have saved onto the BP save game and actually use it even after closing a game, you need to use this node over here after saving the data onto the save game. Alright, so this node over here should be used after saving any data that you want to save onto the BP save game, and then use the save game to slot to save that save game to the slot. Alright, so in our case it is the store slot name, and you have to be very careful of the name over here. The names that you give to the store slot name is very important as you have saw in the previous part of this tutorial series. So yeah, we don't really need to put this in a separate execution bin. And then moving over here to our last section of logic over here. Over here, we are getting the BP camera reference, and we need the BP camera reference because over here we're going to use the variable inside BP camera, that is move camera by. But again over here for the for each loop, we are getting the data from the save G store characters in our save game and using the data that is inside the save G store characters in our for each loop to get the store characters array information onto our spawn actor over here to spawn them. Within the for each loop, you can see we are using the break node, and I already explained what we are doing over here, so I'm not going to explain much about it. But over here, we are using the character spawn position variable over here, which is the variable that we are going to use to determine the position at which the characters need to be spawned. So this is a way to dynamically spawn our actors and then adjust the position between each of them. So in the previous parts, we were positioning the characters in our level by hand, but that method that we used is very inefficient, and in case if you had a bunch of characters, it's going to be very difficult. That is the reason why we are using this logic over here. So it's going to set the distance between the characters on its own. We don't really need to manually position each of the characters. So over here, we are getting the character spawn position, location information, and then adding that location data with move camera by, which is stored in BP camera. And again, the move camera by within BP camera is mainly used to determine the distance at which the camera needs to move from one character to the other. So this is what we were doing in the previous part. Compile this and save it. And that's it for this video. In the next part, we are going to change the logic in BP camera. So thanks for watching and see you later. Bye.